All right. Welcome back into another edition of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Masucci, and today I am super excited to be joined by my guy, Conor Benson. He is here with us today, and I am super excited for another edition. We're talking SEC football again. This is the second year we're talking about it, and Conor was at the big time game of the week, Georgia at Alabama, and we're going to get into the whole game because this was flat out insane. But Conor, welcome back to the show, man. I'm happy to have you on.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, sir.
About last weekend. So excited.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, let's get right into it. Kind of talking about the game. So, Georgia, Alabama here. It was the game of the week. College game day was there. And you could just feel the energy in Tuscaloosa. It was just unbelievable. So talk to me about the pregame a little bit, Conor. Talk to me about the environment, college game day, all of it, with the whole country centered on Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, man. No, it was insane. It started on Thursday, honestly, dude. There's people. I know the hurricane was like kind of crazy, so that was pushing everyone out. So we had people from Tampa, we had people from Florida, we had people from LSU. Everyone just like was flooding down to Tuscaloosa, and it was bumping on Thursday, Friday, and even bigger on Saturday. Woke up early, man. Streets were flooded. Everyone's here. Everyone's excited. Our quad, where we have a big tailgate, was just nuts, packed with people. Everyone here just supporting their team and everything like that, man. And it was an insane game.
Yeah. Just the buzz you could feel, like with Saban coming back to Tuscaloosa, first of all. Watching that college game day, set, it was just like, oh my gosh, everybody's so ready for this game. It's going to be awesome. So, that hype in there, God, it must have been crazy because I could tell, right when I turned on the game, sat down, was ready to watch, just the environment. Holy cow. Talk to me about, when you walked into the arena and seeing that many people getting ready for this game, all of the pregame. Talk to me about that feeling for you.
Dude, yeah, no, it was insane. So the one thing that they told us about was the fact that normally you show up to the stadium maybe like an hour, maybe like half an hour before. Dude, they told us to get there 3 hours early. And because, wow. Obviously former President Trump was there, so security was was like insane. You had to get pat down. It was insane. So dude, we were pushing through one by one, trying to get in the stadium. Once you got there, it was packed. They definitely sold more tickets than seats, man. People were sitting on the stairs, and we were there 2 hours early, just sitting there waiting for the hype, watching the pregame, and just everyone was hyped. Everyone was so excited about it. And just even before kickoff, man, it was everyone was just insanely hyped for the game because it's everyone talks about it being the two biggest programs in college football right now. But especially with Kalen DeBoer's first season and then Kirby Smart being 40 games straight regular season wins. So
yeah.
It was a hyped up game, and straight out of the bat, man, Bama came out on fire, bro. 3 for 3 touchdown drives in a row after stopping Georgia for them, dude. It was. And then it just kept going. It kept going. Especially Jalen Milroe played insane. QBR rating of a 98 for that hype of a game, bro. 27 for 33, 345 yards. And that's just passing with 2 touchdowns. And then the rushing side, 16 carries for 117 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns for almost 500 yards total. So he played out of his mind. And can't complain about the 17-year-old prodigy, Ryan Williams, who's just an absolute stud.
He's the man, dude. Holy cow.
Dude, yeah, he came out of nowhere, man. First game played well, second game played well, and now he's balling. 6 receptions, 177 yards, and 1 TD with the game-winning touchdown. Nuts, kid.
Yeah. Throughout that, especially that first half, you turn on the game, you have no idea what to expect, and then right away, Bama goes down, scores a touchdown. You're like, okay, that makes sense, right? First drive, that's just how it works, right? And then Georgia gets a couple first downs, and you're like, okay, they're moving the ball, and then there's a big time sack for Alabama, forces them to punt, and then Bama goes right down again. right away. And Milroe's
Mhm.
athleticism just, it feels like it's like intoxicating Georgia. Like they can't do anything about it. And then the next drive, Georgia tries a screen pass and then it's intercepted. And Bama goes
Mhm.
down and scores again. So after those first three drives, 21-0, what were the thoughts in your mind? Because I'm just like, whoa, could this turn into 56-0? Like, what's going on?
I mean, yeah, like no, I was so hyped. Obviously, when it's 21-0, it like in like in the first couple minutes, like you're hyped up, but then you realize like, all right, who you're playing? You're
Yeah.
playing currently the greatest coach right now in college football right now. And I mean, all credit to Kirby, he's a fantastic coach, but I mean, if I'm definitely nervous for sure, but I'm excited at the same time because you don't know what like to expect. And then going into half, crazy like we're up, and then Georgia comes out of nowhere. So I mean, it's just a game of
Yeah.
runs. That's all I've like gained from college football. It's a game of runs. I mean, you could compare it exactly to like basketball. It's the same thing. It's a game of runs. Like you're gonna be hot for a little bit, and then
Mm-hmm.
the other team's gonna be hot for a little bit. So it really depends on like where you're at in the game. And I mean, just insane, just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I going into near the end of the first half, it's 28-7. Alabama's flat out dominating. And then they get a safety too. Oh, to top it all off, it's 30-7 going into
Yeah.
halftime, which is just absolutely insane. It's not anything anybody expected. Carson Beck
Mm-hmm.
looked rattled. The whole Georgia team looked rattled. And then to end it, you get a fight on the sidelines with flags all over the place on the Alabama sidelines. So it's like, whoa, like Georgia is too far gone. Like, no way they're coming back in this game, right? And then,
Mm-hmm.
like, you're seeing it in the start of the second half. Georgia is converting every single fourth down. And the thing that Alabama really struggled with was penalties because when they would get a
Mm-hmm.
stop, then there's a flag, a late flag, and you're like, oh, come on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And Georgia started making that comeback slowly but surely. As Georgia was starting to score and it was getting closer and closer, those nerves must have been like heated because it went from a stacked Alabama crowd where they're going crazy to quiet, you know? So
Yeah.
talk to me about like the atmosphere and like as Georgia was coming back, how everybody was feeling.
Yeah, no, I completely, yeah, that's definitely like a factor for sure in terms of like, I mean, you're all hyped up. You're all hyped up. It's 30-7 in the first half. You're coming into the second half. You're like, all right, there's no way they stop us. Like we're hot, we're hot. And then I guess Kirby makes some halftime like checks, decisions, changes up his play role. He starts getting first down, starts getting in the end zone a couple times. I don't know specifically what the amount of unanswered points were, but it was a significant amount because, I mean, the only thing that I really like was like confident in is that like Bama always had like some sort of answer back. Like there was always some sort
Yeah.
of answer back eventually in terms of like an interception. He threw three interceptions, not the count,
Yeah.
well, two, not counting the game winning one at the end of the game. But
Yeah.
it was just like always something going on. He had a fumble too. So it was like always like something we answered back with like a turnover. Maybe didn't go down and score, got some good field positions, punted the ball. We punted the ball really well. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can't complain about that. It's just like one good team going against another good team, so you're going to get competition for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And Carson Beck really came into that second half and like he was making the reads. Like you could tell with his last two games, it was like, and against Kentucky too, like just the reads weren't there, the throws weren't there. And you're like, what's going on here? But he finally kind of figured it out in that second half. And they were moving the ball down the field, getting some deep plays. And they got that big, deep pass. I think it was like a 67-yard touchdown to get them up 34-33, changes the entire landscape of the game. And then Alabama gets the ball back. Jalen Milroe throws it deep to Ryan
First
Williams
play,
for an unbelievable 75-yard touchdown. You
nuts.
must have been like going crazy, dude. Talk to me about your reaction to that play.
The stadium pulse was through the roof, bro. It was actually insane. Especially, well, it was a crazy move, man. It was a crazy. The play that
Yeah.
he did, he turned around, back shoulder ball, caught it, bobbled it, came back, made two guys run into each other, and then used his legs from now on. There, the stadium
Mm-hmm.
was through the roof, and just the fact that, like, I mean, they went back down too. Georgia drove back down, and then Zaire Brown, or was it Zaire? Yeah, Zareem
Yeah.
Brown got the
Mm-hmm.
game winning pick in the end zone. I mean, and that was just like even more because just to add on top of the crazy play from two
Yeah.
freshmen too, which was just nuts.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely nuts because like you're up 7-2. It changes the complete aspect of the game. And then you're like, oh man, Georgia's going back down. They're driving and they're converting these fourth downs again. And then Carson Beck tries to go for one-on-one coverage. An unbelievable play by Brown to make that interception in the end zone to seal the game for Bama. It was really just the reason why I think this is just such a crazy game for us is because in college football, you talked about runs and stuff, and yes, that's true, but you don't see it to this extent. Where
Mhm.
somebody's up like this much and then the game just completely flips. Because, I mean, like, this was, if you just watched the first half in this game, you're like, oh, Alabama's the best team in the country. Georgia has lost everybody and it's not great. But then you
You
watch the
turn off the
second
TV
half.
and move on. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you watch the second half and you're like, oh man, like Georgia's really, really good. And Alabama was a few mistakes away from blowing one of the biggest leads like ever, you know?
Mhm.
And that's kind of interesting. It shows you the flaws in both teams and it shows you how good both these teams can be, which I really think is super interesting. So what I wanted to ask you here is after this game, what are your thoughts on Alabama? Like, are you completely bought all in with this team, or are there some flaws that you're seeing from that second half where you're a little bit nervous going into the rest of your schedule?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think I think it's honestly like crazy how fast and how like good like our team has improved from last year based on like Kalen coming in for his first season. And the one thing, love Coach Saban, go for sure. But I honestly think he didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to use Jalen. I did not think he knew how to
Okay.
use Jalen a lot. We're using a lot of read options. We're doing a lot of RPOs, and we're giving the ball to our freaking workhorse. And he is insanely fast. He can chuck the ball down the field. So just let him be him. And I think Kalen DeBoer is really opening that playbook to like what he's good at and finding like what he's good at. Because the read option, we have two great running backs is Jam Miller and Justin Hayes, who are big bodies who can block for him if he pulls the ball. And like happened on that 4th and 1, he got a 36-yard touchdown, pulled the ball. Justin Hayes made a great block, and just let him use his feet, man. And I mean, that's what Ryan Williams is for, the deep ball too. Like just let him do what he's good at. And I think Nick Saban really like kind of like tried to like pull back to like what he knows what's best and not what Jalen is good at. And so I think Kalen DeBoer is like really like kind of showing the true colors of Jalen. And I don't know, man. I'm really, really in deep in this team, and I think we can go along.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Like, I was a little concerned with how DeBoer would come over with like he had Penix last year. It's a different type of offense. He loved going deep, using these receivers, which he's doing a great job with Milrow with this team. Like Ryan Williams is showing up. Bernard had a really good game on the receiving end as well. And like you're looking at it, and it's like, oh, these are still little DeBoer plays, but he's also getting the RPO involved, getting spots to where Milrow's comfortable, And in that second half, you could see there were some flaws with Milrow's game, but that's with every college quarterback. There's some flaws here and there, and I really think he played an unbelievable game in this one. Like he was just so sensational to come out and like play that way in the first half is just incredible to me. And with Alabama, I think now the only concern I have is like with the penalties, because the penalties is what brought Georgia back into this game, you know?
Mhm.
And Bama's got a tough schedule. They play a lot of these SEC powerhouses. So I'm very excited to see where it's going to all end up, at the end of the day. But I mean, they're two playoff teams. This is the truth.
Mhm.
I think they're both going to end up in that playoff and they're both going to end up near the top. And I'm just really impressed with how DeBoer has come in and like made these guys like such a thing. And one thing on Ryan Williams, I want to say, it's unbelievable how we're seeing so many true freshmen dominate at the receiver position this year. You got Ryan Williams
Mhm.
at Alabama, who's sensational. I can't believe he's 17 years old. They might have said that on the broadcast like 55 times, but
Dude,
it's unbelievable.
it's the most thing like said, dude. It's so funny.
It
He's
is
literally a
funny.
senior in high school, bro. He's literally a senior in high school.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And then you got Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, who's just unreal. I've been raving about him
Mhm.
since the preview podcast. And then you got Nick Marsh at Michigan State, who's unreal, and a lot of people aren't talking about him too much, but Michigan State's actually playing decent football, which is shocking.
Mhm.
So, good on them.
Yeah.
So like there's so many of these true freshmen this year, and you don't see that much with the receiving position. So I'm super excited for this SEC play, and I really think Alabama is going to be near the top. Before we go to break, I want to talk about Georgia just a tad because you saw them live, so you got to see like some of the things, some of the good, some of the bad. Where do you see Georgia moving into SEC play as it continues?
I think honestly, Georgia's like a great football team. They've always been. They like Kirby's a great coach. Carson Beck, I mean, he's a good quarterback. I think he was a little bit overhyped, but he's a good foundational quarterback for that team because they got athletes around him. Trevor Etienne's a good running back, and
Yeah.
I think they're airing the ball out a lot, but I also think they're giving the ground game not much credit because Trevor Etienne, he's a great running back. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only thing that like Bama has over them is that Carson can't run. He can,
Yeah.
but he's not like a Milrow type or like a dual threat type of quarterback. And they're Bama and other teams are not gonna prepare for that. So I think the one thing that Georgia, I mean, they throw the ball well. Carson Beck threw for almost 450 yards too. He had a
Mm-hmm.
couple bad. He had like two bad interceptions. That I
Yeah.
mean, the Damani pick in the first quarter was, I mean, he just threw it to nowhere. Damani just happened to be right there, and then the Gerard Campbell catch was just kind of like thrown into too much traffic. But I
Yeah.
mean, they did lose a decent amount of players, but I think they're Carson Beck's really only looking for like a specific amount of receivers. He's looking for Aaron Smith and Dylan Bell, and they're obviously their tight end Dylan Bell is like he's a great player. That great breakaway touchdown. But I did notice this when I was looking at the stats is that Bama threw to 11 different receivers, which is like
Yeah.
an insane stat, and Georgia only threw for like 7 or 8. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a big difference, but it's definitely like spreading the ball around because obviously you can focus on one player, lock him down, and then the quarterback's going to try to look for someone else. And if he doesn't feel comfortable, then I mean, he's not going to throw them. He's going to like take a sack or throw it away, which leads to turnovers and like fourth down conversions that you have to try to attempt. So I just think it's more like spreading the ball out and just trying to like use your athletes how they like are needed to be used. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. With Georgia, a lot of the things that I saw was really just how they start games. And this was similar to the Kentucky game because they really struggled starting that game to get off the ball, to make stops. You know, they would stop them from scoring touchdowns, but Kentucky would run right over them. And their tackling was an issue, especially in that first half. They were not tackling anybody at the point of attack, and Alabama was just taking advantage of it. I don't know what they said at halftime, but they figured it out at halftime. So you're seeing like two different kinds of defenses. One that really struggles physically and is struggling to make the first tackle, and one that's just unbelievably physical and like really looks like one of the best defenses in the country. You know, so it's really difficult for me to make an estimation on their defense right now because I do think they're going to figure that part about it. With their offense, it's inconsistent too, but like you can see where it's gonna end up. You know, like Carson Beck can have big time moments, and they were missing an O lineman in this game, one of their better ones. But like with Georgia, it's just gonna be like, where can Carson Beck take us? You know, will he have that game? And that's what's going to be tricky because like Carson Beck's going to have to be the better quarterback. And when you're going against guys like Jalen Milrow, Quinn Ewers, you know, people like that are just outstanding quarterbacks, it's going to be difficult for him to shine because he's going to have to be that guy because it's not a Georgia defense that we're accustomed to and them saying that they're the best defense in the country because I don't believe that right now. And you know, with the weapons, it's just not the same not having a guy like Brock Bowers. So I think it's going to be interesting with Georgia. I'm still pretty high on them. They were my preseason national champions. I mean, I'm not changing that right now. Like, I think they're pretty good. But, you know, overall, it did make me put them down a little more. But overall, it was just an unbelievable game. So, like, it's too early to make that determination, you know?
I think it also like has depends on like if you struggle in the first half, that's gonna like if you don't figure that out, that's gonna cost you like big time.
Yeah.
And obviously it costed them this game because we were up by so much that like they couldn't come back. And they did for a little bit, but then like one play led to another, just like big plays happen for a reason and big plays are just like part of the game, right? So
Yeah.
I think the big point is that you just rely on your quarterback. Like I mean, that's gonna be a struggle. You gotta have your other athletes like step up and like make big
Yeah.
plays and relying
Yeah.
on one person is it's a team game. There's a reason why there's 11 people on the field. If everyone doesn't do their job, or if one person doesn't do the job, it's going to be a buff play. So, I mean, relying on one person is really tough to do, especially when you're not using your other athletes to what they should be.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. All right. Well, we're actually going to take a little break. And then when we get back, we're going to do a fun little SEC draft, kind of figuring out what teams we like moving forward.
Welcome, everybody, to the JOMO Show, your home for Oakland sports and beyond from WXOU. My name is Giovanni Mosheri, and I am the host of the one and only show that covers the Oakland University Golden Grizzlies each and every week. Subscribe to the JOMO Show for weekly interviews with athletes and coaches, for a recap of the week's action at OU, and whatever else is going on in the sports world. You can tune in on 88.3 FM, WXOU, or wherever you get your podcasts each week. Go Golden Grizzlies on the JOMO Show.
All right. Welcome back into the show. And we're going to do a little fun SEC draft here. We're just going to kind of talk about our main contenders in the SEC, kind of draft them, have a little fun, and talk about pretty much what we think of each SEC team so far. So I'm going to start with Connor, and then we'll go back and forth talking about some of the SEC teams. So, Connor, you got the first pick in this draft. Who do you think is your favorite team in the SEC right now?
All right, no bias at all, but I'm gonna have to go with the Tide. I'm telling you, man. I think we got like it's on and off for schedule in advance, but I think we looked really good the past couple weeks, putting up some good numbers. Offense is looking good, defense is looking good. We got Vanderbilt next week, which I think we're gonna head over to Nashville. I think it's gonna be a good game. Vanderbilt's looking pretty good, running back's looking pretty good, but I think we're gonna take home that W. And then South Carolina at home. South Carolina's been looking really good, but I also believe we're going to take that one home too. It's at home, good atmosphere. I think it's going to be a big game, and I think we're going to win that. Tennessee, it's going to be. I think that's going to be a real test to us, especially being over in Knoxville. I think that's going to be a close game, but I definitely think we're going to take it home. And Missouri, great team. Cook's looking really good behind center. But I do believe it's going to be a closer game because I think we're going to underestimate them, and I think we're going to pull away a W. Same thing with LSU. That's down in Baton Rouge, so that's going to be a tough arena to play in. And I don't know. I think we're going to clear the rest of the season at LSU, at Oklahoma, and then I think it might go into another overtime for Auburn. It's going to be at home, so it's going to be a crazy game like it always is. No matter how good either team is, it's always going to be a competitive game, but I think we're going to come out undefeated at the end of the season, hopefully be ranked number one. So we got a lot to live up to, but I got Tide number one.
I like it. I like it a lot. And, when I talked about Alabama in my preview, I was like, okay, I could see them really starting out hot. And that's exactly what they've done. That they've gone absolutely insane. I thought their South Florida win was really impressive. South Florida has a really good quarterback. You guys shut them down. Like, it was close at the beginning, and then it kind of just you guys took it from there, which was awesome. And then Wisconsin, we didn't really get to see a true Wisconsin team to me with Van Dyke going down early, but you still took care of business, which is really impressive at Wisconsin. And then the Georgia game, getting that win is absolutely huge. So pretty much my only concern with their schedule is the 3 games you talked about with at Tennessee, home against Missouri, and at LSU all in a row, and to me, that's really tricky. Now with college football, you don't really need to run the table. So if you take a loss in one of those, it's not the worst thing in the world, So overall, I think Alabama could go undefeated. I do think either that at Tennessee or at LSU could be tricky. Missouri, I'm not too sure on. I'm not convinced yet. I feel like it'd be very difficult for them to walk into Tuscaloosa and win that game. So I'm more concerned about the LSU and the Tennessee games. But overall, I think Alabama looks really, really good and are deserving of number 1 overall pick. I like that for sure. My number 2 overall pick, I think I'm going to go Texas here. I think it's pretty clear. They've been awesome throughout the year. Arch Manning has been really, really good when he's played. He was awesome against Mississippi State, and they were able to win 35-13 last week. And then talked about the Louisiana Monroe game. I didn't really get into it too much. I talked about Arch when he came in with UTSA, where he was unreal. Louisiana Monroe, he was okay. Nothing crazy. He threw a couple picks. That there wasn't any flashes. But this last Mississippi State game, you saw it. He looked awesome in this one, and Texas is looking really good. Their defense is so dominant. I talked about it a lot after that Michigan game. They just showed up, man. They're so physically gifted on the defensive end. And I think it's actually 2 weeks. They got the bye next week, but they play Oklahoma as their next game in the Red River rivalry, which would be an awesome game. So that's one I'm circling on there. And then right after that, they get Georgia at home. So these next 2 games are going to be flat out big to see, okay, is Texas really that team? I'm really excited for those games. I think it's going to be really interesting. And then the other 2 games I'm going to circle on their schedule is near the end of the season. They get home against Kentucky, and Kentucky has shown defensively that they can give you some fits, So I'm looking forward to seeing if Kentucky can continue playing that way and if they're ready for a team like Texas at Texas. So I'm excited for that one. And then the last game is a reborn rivalry at Texas A&M, which I'm really excited for that one. I think Texas A&M is one of the most difficult places to play, and I think it's going to be a really, really tough game. What are your thoughts on Texas so far this year, Connor?
No, I definitely was very, very faithful in terms of Texas. Like with Quinnen Ewers playing in the beginning of the season, he looked very good. He was playing out of his mind like he usually was. Heisman contender as always. Very good, very consistent. Just plays his game to like what he needs to be, and he plays real well. He's got great receiving core. We got Isaiah Bond coming over from Alabama, who he's been loving a lot, and then you got Gunnar Helm, who is just a low key just short target that he's played what he needs to play. I am very curious about that Georgia game. I think obviously we gave Georgia a run for their money. Georgia gave us a run for our money at the end. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a hyped game, especially being at UT. So I think that's going to be a close one. I really think if Arch is there, I don't think he has it to play in that hype of a game. A big fan of Arch. I was really upbringing of him, and a whole family and generational history, everything like that, with Peyton and Eli being uncles and stuff. But I don't know, under pressure, man, he doesn't seem like the right type for those big games. And I think if Quinnen comes back, I think it's going to be a bigger situation for Georgia to struggle with overall. And then, the Texas A&M game, that's a reliving rivalry down in College Station, man. That's going to be a big one. And I think even though Texas A&M has not looked great, I really think they're going to give Texas a run for their money, especially being down there and that big of a rivalry coming back.
For sure. All right, you got number 3. Who do you got here?
I think we both can agree Georgia, man. Georgia, obviously they're a great football team. They've always been a good football team, but obviously after that tough loss, I think they're going to bounce back and make some adjustments, and I think they're going to do very well throughout the rest of the season. I think they're going to give Texas a run for their money.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree completely. The only games they got a ridiculous schedule, man. Like Texas, you get at Ole Miss, and you get home against Tennessee. So you get the full gauntlet when it comes to Georgia, and I think overall we've seen a lot from them. I really think they're gonna stand tall and stand to the test. It might lose one more game, which in this new era is completely fine. With 2 losses, if you lose to Texas and Alabama at their places, it's not the worst thing in the world, So with Georgia here, I've seen a lot from them, and I really think they're going to continue to show out. So I'm pretty high on Georgia as well, and I think they're a clear 3, like you were saying. Looking at number 4 here, I'm going Tennessee here. And Tennessee, to me, just they're so young, but they're so talented, dude. They've been sensational throughout the year. I've talked about them a lot. The domination that they showed against NC State was unreal. 51-10 in this game was just crazy. NC State was sitting at 24 in the country, and I was just like, whoa. This put me on Tennessee. I was like, wow, I wasn't this high on them, but they're looking really, really good. And then they get Oklahoma 2 weeks ago and are able to show out, win that game 25-15. And this game wasn't really a 25-15 game. They kind of dominated the game throughout. Oklahoma made a slow comeback later, and it was weird. Tennessee's offense did stall out a little bit, but overall, I was impressed with everything I saw from them. Looking at their schedule here, they're tough ones. They get Georgia on the road, which is very difficult, and then it's Alabama at home too. Those are the 2 tough ones. Those are the 2 circle games, and anything can happen in those games. So overall, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Tennessee. Nico's an unbelievable quarterback. He's one of the most fundamentally sound college quarterbacks I've seen in a long time. He's really impressive. And I'm very, very high on him. So overall, when you have a quarterback like that, you're dangerous. And Tennessee is that team. They're flat out dangerous in this conference.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think Nico's really showing his true colors and just playing what he is. He's a crazy athletic quarterback. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. He's 6'6". He's massive. He doesn't need to worry about looking over any offensive lineman. He's already that tall. And I mean, he can sling it, man. He's young. He's athletic. He's got every single like attribute that you need to be a good college quarterback in this league, especially how he's performing. And yeah, those Georgia and Alabama games are going to be tough, especially being down in Athens. It's going to be a hard game. They'll bring it to them for sure, and I especially think it's going to be a hard game on Bama, especially going to Tennessee. And I think those two games are definitely their two runs for their money, and whether or not they're going to do well the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. All right, Connor, you got number 5 here. So talk to me about who you got at 5. We were talking off air and we weren't sure here. So talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so I definitely think we were between Missouri and Ole Miss, but I mean,
Yeah.
after taking a tough loss last week, I'm still going to go Ole Miss. I think they're definitely fundamental. I think they are a very mature team, and I think Lane Kiffin has definitely brought a good game plan. But I believe in Jackson Dart. I think he's a great quarterback. He's been there for a while. He knows his area, and they got a lot of home games that I'm very faithful in. So I really think that they're going to pull out a pretty good season and make a good run in the playoffs for sure. Because I don't think they're going to take maybe one more loss, possibly to Georgia at home. But Georgia, Oxford, that's a hard place to play in. It's a really hard place to play in, especially that big of a game, two big SEC schools. It's going to be a tough game for Georgia, and it's going to be a tough game for Ole Miss. So, I mean, it's going to be a fun game to watch for sure. Very competitive, but, I mean, it comes down to the wire for sure in that one.
Yeah, no, the Ole Miss has been tricky for me, especially after this tough loss they took to Kentucky last week. It's just weird to kind of rank them. I think it's good to have them at 5 because at the beginning of the year they were just so dominant. There was no touching them. They were just flat out smoking people. And then you finally get SEC play, and you're playing a very weird defense in Kentucky. They could get you off your slots, and that's what happened. Jackson Dart just looked off in this game. He was able to hit Trey Harris a couple times, but it wasn't the Ole Miss that we're used to, and Kentucky was able to get into that running football where their run game was dominant in this one. And that's tricky. It's tough because Ole Miss was never on the field. They got Jackson Dart right off the field, and Kentucky was moving the ball and running the ball, and it won that time of possession. And when you're playing teams like that, it's just difficult. It's difficult when you can't do it. The thing with Ole Miss, though, is their schedule is super light, and this is a year where they have to be good because this is one of the best teams you're going to have in a long, long time. So Lane Kiffin's got a lot of pressure on him, and they already dropped one now. So now the pressure really, really kicks up, So they're going to have that big game with Georgia. And, that's the game I'm really circling for them. And it's going to be big questions on Jackson Dart. This is your year, man. This is your year to really step up and be that guy. And losing that game against Kentucky, it's not a great look. It's not a great look. So with Ole Miss here, they are 5, but there's a lot of concerns for me with Ole Miss and seeing them as a playoff team because I do think that's a tough loss to take.
I think it was I definitely think it was a really tough loss, but I don't think they played absolutely horrible. I just don't think they could find what they wanted. I mean, Ole Miss had 10 tackles for a loss, and Kentucky had 7. Their defense played well. I mean, Trey Henderson had 11 receptions for 174 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, it's not bad performing. It's just they just couldn't find their consistency. They couldn't find the flow of the offense. They couldn't get it going. It's just, I mean, Jackson Dart, 79 quarterback rating, not too bad, but I mean, they just couldn't find each other. And I think it was just definitely miscommunication. Just maybe we're well prepared for this team and underestimated them.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see it with a lot of the great teams. It's just oh, can you take this and turn it into something ridiculous? Or do you take this and does it spiral out of control? And that's what I'm curious to see, because Ole Miss, they didn't play anybody out of conference. And now you get a conference opponent and this happens. This might be a learning moment. It could not be, So I am interested to see exactly what happens there with Ole Miss. But I do like them sitting at 5 for sure. Looking at my 6, I think I'm going to go Missouri here. And Missouri's tricky here. I actually considered throwing LSU at the 6th spot, but Missouri's tricky just because, like, I just want to see more. Brady Cook's awesome. He is a outstanding quarterback and has had some sensational plays. But like their biggest game this year was probably their out of conference game against Boston College. And that was a tricky game. Like it was back and forth, and Boston College was just hanging around and playing their style and was able to really make that a close game. And I was just like, whoa, come on, Missouri. You're supposed to win that game by like 2 touchdowns at home. Like it's supposed to be bigger here. And I mean, I feel like everybody should be higher on them because this is a year they have to win too, because their schedule isn't great looking at SEC teams. Like their schedule isn't the hardest thing in the world. They get Alabama and that's one of their toughest games. I don't really think they have any of the other big 4 in their schedule. So I really think with Missouri, this is a must-win season. So again, a lot of pressure on them. But overall, like I just wanted to see a little more from them.
No, I completely agree. I would 100% put Missouri at 6 for sure, just based on how they're playing. And like obviously there was like a big hype around them just because like they haven't been great often, but Cook comes in, does his thing, and they get W's. Like they're winning football games. And I mean like if they come in like confident to Tuscaloosa, they could give Alabama a run for their money for sure. I mean obviously it's a hard place to play in for sure, and I don't know. I think it's going to be a very competitive game, and I think they're going to do well in the SEC and the rest of the season, and most likely make the playoffs with maybe like 2 losses.
I like it. All right, so we got one more pick each. So Connor, who do you got at 7 for you?
I mean, LSU, man. I mean, I haven't watched them like a decent amount. Brian Kelly's a great coach. He's been putting in the recruiting process like insanely. So he's got some good kids coming over there. But I don't know. They got some hard games coming up. We got to go. Alabama's got to go to Baton Rouge and play them. I think that's going to be a hard game for them. But I mean, it's a home game, so they always had the head advantage in that. But I mean, I don't know what a crazy amount of like schedule they have, but I mean, 7's a tough number, man. Because like once it gets down that low, it's like it's competitive football. Because you got Oklahoma playing pretty well, you got South Carolina playing pretty well, and I mean, Arkansas can push, Kentucky can push. Like it's just a competitive league this year. Like everyone's trying to get to the top, and I just really think it's an unpredictable game for anyone. So I don't know. It's hard to put LSU there because I do like South Carolina, but it's just I think it's just too early for them, and I just think they need to find their own. But I don't know. I'm going to put LSU at 7.
I like it. I think LSU is a pretty clear 7. They've looked pretty good these last few weeks. They had a really gritty win against South Carolina and have been playing teams close. Like it was a tough loss at the beginning of the year against USC. And you're like, gosh, like this team does not know how to play in week 1. They struggle with it every year. But, with LSU, there's ups and downs. I like their quarterback. I think he's pretty solid. Garrett Nussmeyer.
Yeah,
I think so.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. I think he's been really, really good throughout the year. And they always have so many weapons here. Like they dive deep in the transfer portal. They got a lot of 5-star recruits. So I really think they're going to be able to figure it out. But they're sitting at 7 for a reason. They just can't get over the hump. And they're not completely there yet. So I don't really feel like they could make a run or anything like that, or anything crazy,
Mm-hmm. It's a competitive league, man. It's up in the air, honestly.
It is. Number 8 here, my last pick. See, I was between 3 teams. And like for me, I was just like, okay, I'm not in on Oklahoma because they're benching Jackson Arnold, and I don't like that decision at all. Like, I just don't think it's a smart decision. Texas A&M has been super weird throughout the year. They lost a tough home game against Notre Dame, and they've won really close games against some SEC teams that I think are okay. Like Florida's okay, and their win last week was impressive. But it didn't really get me too excited for them. And then Kentucky's just been awesome these past few weeks. And I think I'm going to ride the Kentucky train. I think I'm putting them at 8. I love what their defense is doing. And I watched that whole Georgia game, man. They controlled every inch of that game, flat out dominated. They were so good on defense, physically strong. Trevor Etienne had nothing to do with that run against that run defense. It was flat out incredible. And then on the offensive end, they just run over people. They run the ball so effectively. Georgia couldn't stop the run against them. They would get all the way down, and you can't finish against a Georgia defense, which, okay, that's fine, you know. And Ole Miss's defense is tough, and they were able to finish some drives and make plays happen. So to me, Kentucky, I think, is very, very impressive. Looking at their schedule, they go to Tennessee and they go to Texas, which is such a hard schedule. They get like everybody. So I don't think it's going to turn into a playoff run or anything crazy, but I could see them being a very, very tough, like 8-4, 9-3 team that nobody wants to play. So that's why I'm putting them eight, because I think they're just tricky, and I think Stoops is doing a great job with them.
Yeah, no, I think I was definitely in between some teams, and I think it was a little bit of a curveball. But man, I'm a big fan of Mississippi State.
Okay.
I, I'm like low-key a big fan of Mississippi State. They played Texas, not bad, 35-13,
Yeah.
not too bad. They didn't get too many scores. They got one touchdown and 2 field goals. You kept it like that's a reasonable score against Texas, the number 2 team in the country. So, I mean, their quarterback Van Burnham, not playing horrible, big runner, loves running the ball. I think he had he threw for 12 for 23, not great, 144 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. He didn't play very very well, but I mean, they split carries with Booth and Daniels as their running backs, both like splitting carries of like 18 and 15 carries. Not too many yards, but I mean, I think they can move the ball pretty well. But I I can't get over Kentucky, man. They've just been playing real well, real gritty football. They don't care who they play. They're playing their game, and I just really think that their coach is doing a great job. They do have a tough schedule coming up. Going to Tennessee, hard place to play at. Going to Texas, hard place to play at. And I mean, those are some tough games you got to compete with. I mean, they competed with Georgia, and they ended up beating Ole Miss. I mean, like, it's at their place too. So I mean, they're a gritty team that are going to give the rest of the SEC teams some dog fights, and I think it's going to come down to the wire for a couple of those games. Hot take,
Yeah.
hot take, hot take.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I mean, I really think the SEC, this is one of the most loaded conferences I've ever seen. Like, just from top to bottom, it's really incredible. And I think that clearly in the football world, like, best conference in college football for sure. And like, the Big Ten has some teams, but like, football wise, I really think it's SEC from top to bottom. Like, the 8 teams that we talked about here are just really, really good football teams. And I really think, like, if Kentucky was in any other conference, like, they're near that top of the ACC, right? So I mean, like, looking at it that way, I really think it's just an incredible conference, and it's great to talk about it, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree. I think Kentucky would give Ohio State a big run for their money if they're in the Big Ten. I think they'd possibly be up there with them, man. And like, obviously, it's a different world over there or up there in the north. But I mean, they're a good football team, and it's hard to put them so low on the title pool in SEC football. But they're a good football team.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Well, Connor, thank you so much for joining the show, man. This has been a lot of fun. I love talking SEC ball, man.
Yeah, dude, appreciate you having me on, man. I love this. It's an exciting world. It's an exciting world in football right now, especially with everything, all the combined conferences and everything like that. It's going to be an interesting playoff run for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. We got 12-team playoff. We got people, new conferences. It's crazy stuff going on in college football, and we'll be covering it all year on Jake's Takes. That's going to wrap up the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you're at. Connor will hopefully be back with us, and later in October, we'll talk more SEC football, because that's storylines, man. We got to get it out there. But that's going to wrap up the show for today. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.